What happens when two of the most high-profile women in entertainment collide on live television over an issue that's a lot more personal than anyone expected? What you're about to hear will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about celebrity activism, royal drama, and the cost of telling your truth on national TV. Stay tuned and hit subscribe and drop a comment, because this one gets intense. The energy on the set of The View was electric as Angelina Jolie took her seat. Looking calm on the outside, but clearly carrying weight beneath the surface. The Oscar-winning actress was there to talk about her latest humanitarian work, but the conversation was about to veer in a direction that would dominate headlines for weeks. Whoopi Goldberg had just wrapped her intro when Joy Behar leaned in with a spark in her eye. "Angelina, we have to ask about Meghan Markle's recent comments on celebrity activism. She suggested some Hollywood figures use humanitarian causes as publicity stunts instead of doing real advocacy. Do you have a response to that?" The question hit like a live round. Angelina's jaw tightened, just barely, but her voice stayed controlled. "Well, Joy, I think it's interesting when someone who's been in the spotlight for a relatively short time feels qualified to judge the motives of people who have spent decades doing the work." The audience shifted, already feeling the tension. Sunny Hostin jumped in. "But you can understand her point of view, right? She's dealt with a level of scrutiny most people can't imagine since joining the royal family." Angelina let out a dry, almost bitter laugh. "Unprecedented scrutiny. I'm sorry, but stepping into a life of privilege and then presenting yourself as a victim is not unprecedented. What is unprecedented is walking away from royal responsibilities and then trying to profit off the same title you say has caused you so much harm." The panel exchanged looks. This was not the careful, diplomatic tone they were expecting from someone known for being measured in public. Sarah N. tried to bring the tone back down. "Both of you have spoken out for women's rights. There has to be some shared ground there, no?" Angelina shook her head. "Advocacy requires sacrifice, Sarah. It means showing up when there are no cameras. It means being there when it's dangerous, when it's thankless, when there's no red carpet. Real advocacy doesn't come bundled with a Netflix deal and an estate in Montecito." The studio audience went silent, hanging on every word. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to play mediator. "But isn't it fair to say people can contribute in different ways? Not everyone can physically go to refugee camps." "You're absolutely right, Alyssa," Angelina said, her voice growing stronger. "Not everyone can go to refugee camps. But everyone can choose sincerity over performance. When I go to refugee camps, I don't take a film crew. I don't line it up with a movie release. I go because people are suffering, not because my publicist told me it would help my image." Whoopi stepped in, trying to regain control. "Hold on, Angelina. That sounds like a direct shot at someone who isn't here to defend herself." Angelina turned toward Whoopi, eyes locked with an intensity that made the veteran host lean back slightly. "Whoopi, with all respect, I've stayed quiet for a long time while the humanitarian community gets dragged by someone who wouldn't last 5 minutes doing the actual work. The refugees I work with don't care if your feelings are hurt. They care about survival." The tension in the room was unmistakable. Joy Behar, never one to dodge heat, pressed anyway. "But you'd agree Meghan has faced unique challenges as a biracial woman entering the royal family." Angelina's face hardened. "Joy, I have worked with women who faced real discrimination, real oppression. Women who've been trafficked. Women who've escaped war zones with nothing but the clothes on their backs. I'm not dismissing anyone's personal experience, but perspective matters. If you're upset about not getting the tiara you wanted while there are children starving in Yemen, maybe it's time to rethink your priorities." The audience actually gasped at that. Sarah tried to soften the mood. "Angelina, you clearly feel strongly about this. Was there something specific that set you off?" Angelina paused. Sarah, what set me off was watching someone use real suffering as a backdrop for their own story. When Meghan talked about mental health struggles, which are absolutely important, she did it while promoting a lifestyle brand. When she talks about privacy, it's during a multi-million-dollar interview watched by millions. The disconnect is unbelievable. Sunny Hostin cut in. But couldn't you argue that her platform lets her spread messages about mental health and social justice to more people? Sunny, let me explain something about platform and reach, Angelina said, her voice sharpening. When I became a UN Goodwill Ambassador, I didn't demand a title or a crown. I didn't negotiate some special arrangement where I kept the perks, but walked away from the responsibility. I learned the issues. I studied the situations. And I did the work. Real advocacy isn't about reach. It's about depth by this point. The co-hosts were clearly struggling to keep control of the conversation. Alyssa tried again to find neutral ground. Don't you think there's room for different approaches to advocacy and public service? Angelina's response was fast and sharp. Alyssa, there is a difference between different approaches and performative activism. When your version of women's empowerment is throwing your sister-in-law under the bus in a tell-all interview. When your version of mental health awareness is publicly attacking your own family while they're grieving. That's not advocacy. That's exploitation. The studio went silent. Whoopi looked straight into the camera, clearly trying to land the plane before things blew up even more. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Angelina Jolie. As the show cut to commercial, the tension in the room felt heavy. The audience sat in stunned quiet, processing what they'd just heard. Angelina stayed perfectly composed, even after delivering what many would consider a brutal public takedown. The co-hosts leaned in together, whispering about how they were going to handle the rest of the segment. When they came back from break, Whoopi's face was serious. We're back with Angelina Jolie. And before the break, we were having a very frank conversation about celebrity activism and public responsibility. Angelina, do you want to clarify anything you said? Angelina looked directly into the camera, voice steady. Whoopi, I don't think clarification is what's needed. Honesty is what's needed. People in the humanitarian world have been watching with real concern as serious causes get co-opted for personal branding. When someone uses a cause to promote themselves instead of promoting the cause, it actively harms the people they claim they're helping. Joy Behar jumped back in, sounding skeptical. But Angelina, don't you think you're being a little harsh? Everyone has to start somewhere in their activism journey. That question lit the next fuse. Angelina's eyes flashed, and the entire panel shifted in their seats. Joy, that's exactly the issue. We're treating activism like it deserves participation trophies. This is not kindergarten soccer where everyone gets a medal for showing up. When you're talking about human rights abuses, when you're talking to survivors of genocide, when you're literally trying to keep people alive, there is no room for amateur hour. The audience was captivated. People in the crowd were already holding up their phones to record. Sarah tried to step in. But experience has to start somewhere, right? Sarah, you're absolutely right, Angelina said, her energy building. Experience does start somewhere. Mine started with actually going to refugee camps, not staging photo ops. It started with learning languages so I could talk directly to the people I was trying to help. It started with understanding that the work is not about me. It's about them. If your activism starts with complaining that you didn't get enough diamonds in your tiara, you've already lost the plot. Sunny Hostin looked visibly uncomfortable, but kept going. Angelina, you're clearly talking about specific situations. Isn't it unfair to go after someone who isn't here to defend herself? Angelina turned to Sunny, laser-focused. Sunny, she's had every chance to defend herself. She's had primetime specials. She's had podcasts. She's had streaming deals. What she hasn't had is accountability. When you go on international television and accuse an entire family of racism, when you say an institution failed you while still profiting from that institution, somebody has to call out the hypocrisy. The audience was split, some nodding, some stunned. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to mediate. But isn't it possible that both things are true? That someone can face very real challenges and also have privilege? Alyssa, of course, both things can be true, Angelina said, still sharp. The difference is in how you manage that privilege. When I divorced Brad Pitt, I didn't go on television and air our private business. When I went through custody battles, I didn't weaponize my children's pain to get public sympathy. Privacy isn't something you claim while you're selling your story to the highest bidder. Whoopi tried to steady it. Angelina, that's a very personal comparison. Whoopi, Angelina said, everything about this is personal. Angelina fired back, her control slipping just enough to show the anger underneath. When someone uses humanitarian work as decoration for their personal story, it becomes personal for everyone who has dedicated their life to that work. When someone claims to speak for the voiceless while drowning out real victims with their own complaints, it becomes personal. Sensing the moment was about to boil over, Joy Behar pushed further. But Angelina, don't you think there's some jealousy here? Meghan got the fairy tale wedding, the prince, the global attention. The question landed like an explosive. Angelina let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Joy, let's be clear. I've been in war zones. I've held children who were orphaned by violence. I've seen real suffering, real injustice, real oppression. The idea that I would be jealous of someone who walked away from their duties to monetize their title isn't just insulting, it's absurd. The audience reacted, some gasping at how blunt that was. Sarah looked genuinely worried about where this was headed. Angelina, you seem really angry about this. Is there something deeper going on here? Angelina paused and took a breath. Sarah, what's going on is that I've watched someone turn real issues into performance. Mental health awareness matters, but not when it's bundled with a lifestyle brand. Racial justice matters, but not when it's used as a shield against fair criticism. Women's empowerment matters, but not when it's built on tearing down other women. Sunny Hostin jumped in. But surely you can understand the unique position she was in. Trying to navigate royal protocol and still hold on to her identity. Sunny? I understand difficult positions, Angelina replied, her voice tightening. I understand what it feels like to be watched, to be judged, to have every move analyzed. But I also understand putting the work before the attention, putting the cause before the celebrity. If your answer to royal protocol is to walk away from your responsibilities while keeping the titles, you're not breaking barriers. You're breaking promises. The panel was clearly struggling to keep control. Alyssa tried once more. But don't you think that talking openly about mental health struggles, no matter the situation, can help other people? Angelina didn't hesitate. Alyssa, talking about mental health is important. But timing matters. Context matters. If you're promoting a mental health initiative while publicly attacking family members who are grieving, if you're talking about compassion while showing none to the people who welcomed you, the message disappears under the hypocrisy. The audience had gone completely quiet. Whoopi looked straight at Angelina. Angelina, these are extremely serious accusations. Are you prepared to stand by them? Angelina met her gaze without blinking. Whoopi, I've spent 20 years building credibility in humanitarian work. I've worked with governments, with UN agencies, with grassroots organizations. I've put my money on the line. I've put my safety on the line. I've put my family's privacy on the line for causes I believe in. Yes, I'll stand by what I've said, because my actions have already spoken louder than any interview ever could. Joy Behar pushed even harder. But Angelina, aren't you worried that saying all of this publicly could damage your own reputation? Angelina's smile was cold. Joy, my reputation isn't built on victim narratives or tell-all interviews. It's built on results. The women I've helped escape trafficking don't care about my reputation. The refugees I've worked with don't care about my image. They care about what gets done, not how it looks. The tension in the studio was close to the breaking point. Sarah sounded cautious. Angelina, do you think there's any path to healing this? Any way forward? Sarah, healing requires honesty, Angelina said, her voice taking on a hard edge. It means admitting when you've used other people's pain for personal gain. It means understanding that activism is not about building your brand. It's about serving other people. Until there's real accountability, the divide will stay because the damage to real humanitarian work will keep going. Sunny tried one last time. But isn't there room for forgiveness, for growth, for learning from mistakes? Angelina's last answer was simple and brutal. Sunny, forgiveness requires remorse. Growth requires humility. Learning requires listening. If someone keeps profiting from the exact behavior they say they regret, if they keep playing the victim while hurting other people, if they keep demanding privacy while selling their story, what exactly are we supposed to forgive? The show cut to commercial, but the damage was done. Social media was already erupting with clips and reactions. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, trying to absorb what they had just watched. Angelina sat perfectly composed, a portrait of controlled fury. The co-hosts huddled at the table, clearly trying to figure out how to survive the final segment of what had just become the most explosive interview in The View's recent history. When the cameras came back, the entire room knew they were in uncharted territory. Whoopi's expression was grave. We're back with Angelina Jolie. Clearly, this conversation has gone places none of us expected. Angelina, before we wrap up, is there anything you want to say directly to Meghan Markle? The air in the studio snapped tight. Angelina looked straight into the camera, voice steady and absolute. If Meghan is watching this, I want her to understand something. People in the humanitarian community see through performative activism. We see through manufactured crises. We see through the use of real suffering as a tool for personal gain. The refugees I work with, the women I stand up for, they deserve better than to be used as props in someone else's storyline. The audience didn't make a sound. Joy Behar leaned in, sensing the headline. That's a very direct message. Do you think she'll respond? Angelina let out a sharp little laugh. Joy, I'm sure she will. She always does. But here's the difference between us. I answer with action, not interviews. When I'm criticized, I go back to the field and work harder. When she's criticized, she books another appearance to explain why everyone else is the problem. Sarah looked genuinely concerned. Angelina, aren't you worried that this kind of public confrontation might overshadow the work you're trying to highlight? Sarah, that's the whole point, Angelina said, her voice growing stronger. The work should never be overshadowed by the worker. The cause should never come second to the celebrity. The moment you make yourself the story instead of the people you say you're helping, you've already failed as an advocate. Sunny Hostin tried one last time to challenge her. But couldn't you argue that fame and visibility can actually bring attention to important causes? Angelina didn't hesitate. Sunny, visibility without substance is just noise. Celebrity without sacrifice is just vanity. If your advocacy comes with a price tag, if your compassion comes with conditions, if your service comes with self-promotion, you're not helping anyone but yourself. The atmosphere in the studio was electric. Alyssa Farah Griffin made one last attempt at diplomacy. Angelina, what would you say to people who think this is too harsh? Angelina turned toward her, eyes blazing. Alyssa, I'd say the soft version has already failed. The polite version has failed. People in humanitarian work have been quiet for too long while our work is watered down by someone treating real suffering like a PR opportunity. Sometimes the only thing that cuts through the noise is the hard truth. Whoopi stepped in to close. Angelina, what do you hope comes out of this conversation? Whoopi, I hope people start demanding authenticity from the people who call themselves advocates. Angelina replied, her voice taking on a kind of moral force. I hope they start asking real questions about motives. I hope they learn to tell the difference between people who serve causes and people who use causes to serve themselves. And most importantly, I hope they stop obsessing over personalities and start focusing on the actual issues. Joy wasn't done. Angelina, if Meghan Markle called you right now and asked to work with you on a humanitarian project, what would you say? The question landed like a dare. Angelina didn't hesitate. Her answer came fast and without a single crack. Joy. I'd tell her this. Real humanitarian work is not about photo ops and press releases. It's about showing up when nobody's watching, when there's no credit to collect, when the work is dirty and dangerous and thankless. If she wants to do that kind of work, she knows where to find me. But if she's looking to use humanitarian work as a platform for her personal brand, she can call someone else. The audience gasped. You could feel the whole studio tighten. Sarah looked stunned. That's a pretty serious line you're drawing. Sarah, it's not a line, Angelina replied calmly. It's a standard. It's the same standard I hold myself to. It's the same standard I hold every advocate to. The refugees I work with don't care about your feelings. They care about results. The women I fight for don't care about your image. They care about action. And if you can't meet that standard, you have no business claiming to speak for them. Sunny Hostin made one last attempt to soften the impact. But doesn't everyone deserve a chance to grow and learn in their advocacy journey? Angelina's final answer may have been the most devastating thing she said all day. When someone keeps making the same choices, when they keep putting themselves at the center of stories that aren't about them, when they keep profiting from the same behavior they publicly claim to regret, at what point do we stop calling it growth and start calling it what it is? Exploitation. The studio went completely silent. Whoopi looked directly into the camera, visibly aware of the moment they were sitting in. We want to thank Angelina Jolie for what has definitely been one of the most candid conversations we've ever had on The View. Angelina, any final thoughts? Angelina turned to the camera one last time. Her voice didn't waver. My final thought is this. Real advocacy isn't about building your brand. It's about serving other people. It's not about getting credit. It's about creating change. It's not about telling your story. It's about amplifying the voices of people who actually need to be heard. If you're watching this and you truly want to make a difference, stop chasing celebrity activists. Find the people doing the work. Support them. Learn from them. And most importantly, stand with them where the work is actually happening. The show cut to commercial, but the moment was already loose in the world. Social media was flooding with clips, reactions, outrage, applause. The audience in the studio just sat there, stunned. Angelina stayed composed, like she'd just delivered closing arguments. The co-hosts looked shaken. They knew, in real time, they had just presided over television history by the time credits rolled. Everyone in that room understood they hadn't just watched another celebrity dust up. They had watched a public line being drawn. This interview would dominate headlines for weeks. It would spark arguments about celebrity activism, about credibility, about privilege. It would force people to pick sides. It would split even the humanitarian world, some praising the blunt honesty, others condemning the way it was delivered, because Angelina Jolie hadn't just criticized Meghan Markle. She had gone after the entire idea of performative activism and done it live, in front of millions. The aftermath would be intense. Comment sections would explode. News outlets would dissect every eyebrow raise, every pause. Friends, allies, studios, foundations, all of them would feel pressure to react. But in that studio, as the audience finally began to stand and file out, one thing was beyond debate. Angelina Jolie had said exactly what she wanted to say, the way she wanted to say it. There was no room left to clarify or spin. The gauntlet wasn't just thrown. It was dropped like a sledgehammer. The View has had its share of fireworks over the years. But this wasn't normal TV drama between famous people. This was a direct challenge to the culture of celebrity activism itself, delivered by someone with the credibility and the scars to make it land. Now, it's your turn. Did Angelina Jolie go too far, or was this the reality check celebrity activism needed? Tell me in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for more stories you won't see anywhere else.